AEW Double or Nothing 2021 is in the books. Live fans are back. We have a new Women's World Champion, and the Inner Circle have come out of Stadium Stampede 2 as the winners. And we're going to talk about all of it next in this spoiler-free wrestling video. If you skipped over the buy-in, the Double or Nothing buy-in show, and Serena Deeb defending the NWA Women's Championship against the inaugural AEW Women's Champion Riho, you missed one of the best matches on the show, certainly one of my favorite matches on the show. This was actually a rematch from a match which took place back in February. It was in the Title Eliminator tournament, and Riho had defeated Deeb in a match that aired on Dynamite. That match was very well reviewed, a lot of positive feedback about that match. It also did very well in the ratings as well. Unfortunately for Deeb, and people such as myself who enjoy watching Deeb wrestle, she had to have some minor knee surgery after that match, so she was gone for about 3 months. Of course, now Deeb returns. She ends up having a stellar match against Red Velvet the other week on Dynamite. And now Deeb, who is the NWA Women's Champion, she's booked in a match to defend that championship against the person who beat her back in February on the buy-in. So just before we get into the match itself between Deeb and Riho, a little bit of a note about what's going on with the NWA Women's Championship at the moment. So the NWA has a pay-per-view this weekend. And on the last episode of Power, there was a number one contendership match between Camille, who is in Nick Aldis's the faction's called Strictly Business. I always want to call them Risky Business. Camille's in Nick Aldis's Strictly Business faction. She was taking on Thunder Rosa. The winner then would go on to face Serena Deeb for the championship this weekend on pay-per-view. However, the match between Rosa and Camille went to a time limit draw. So now we don't know what's going on with the Women's Championship at the NWA pay-per-view on the weekend. That was the last episode of Power before the NWA pay-per-view, but they will have that NWA Power Surge show, which goes out for free on YouTube on Tuesday. So I would imagine they're going to address the NWA Women's Championship situation then. Could be a triple threat. We could see Serena Deeb versus Camille versus Thunder Rosa in a sort of triple threat type match. That could be interesting to see as well, but Serena Deeb being back is great for not only the AEW women's division, but also the NWA women's division as well. So now this match was interesting. Serena Deeb turned heel with one shot to the face. So coming into this match, the crowd is going crazy. They're reacting like they hadn't been able to be at full capacity for like a year and a half or something. In fact, that's exactly what happened. And so this crowd was crazy energetic. This was like an ECW crowd, you know? Like ECW crowds, they'd only have a few thousand, but they were right on top of the action, and they were into everything. And that's kind of what this felt like. And Deeb versus Riho was the first match in front of a full capacity crowd for a year and a half. And so very exciting stuff. So the crowd's really going. They're doing the "Let's go Deeb, let's go Riho" chants. But I guess at some point it was decided Serena Deeb is going to get booed in this match. We're going to make it so that Serena Deeb gets booed in this match. And I was a little surprised by that because I think wrestling fans, certainly over her last two matches, the first match against Riho and then the match against Red Velvet recently, wrestling fans, certainly I'm this way, starting to realize that Serena Deeb is really good. Like, really, really good. Like, just, Serena Deeb is a very good wrestler. And this was this was evidence last night as it was in her match against Red Velvet, as it was against her match against Riho in February. And I just think we almost missed Serena Deeb's career completely. Because if you remember, she came up and she was on the WWE main roster. She became part of CM Punk's Straight Edge Society. And then they fired her when she was shown like having a drink and not living up to the straight edge gimmick outside of wrestling. Like somehow that mattered back then. Maybe if it was the 1980s or even up to the mid 90s, we could see that. But Serena Deeb, fired for not adhering to the gimmick. I don't even know when that was. That was not that long ago. So, and then Deeb was just gone, because remember, for a long time there was no competition. Like, maybe she could have gone to TNA or whatever, but there was no real like major league level competition for her to go. So Serena Deeb was gone for years and years and years, until WWE ran the initial Mae Young Classic. They brought her in for that, and then they hired her on as a trainer. They didn't even want her to be a wrestler. That really good wrestler that we've seen have these 3 great matches in a row now, WWE was like, we'll pass, but if you could show some other people on how to wrestle, that would be awesome. Fast forward a year ago, last April, they fire her as part of the pandemic roster cuts, and AEW is like, yeah, thanks, we'll take Serena Deeb. And the NWA was like, okay, thank you, we'll take Serena Deeb, and we'll actually have her wrestle. And now she's a major part of those 2 women's divisions. So anyways, she turns heel here in just the quickest way possible. So they're having this match. Fans are chanting for Deeb. Fans are chanting for Riho. And then they do this spot where Riho reaches out her hand, and she just wants to shake Deeb's hand. We're going to have a good sportsman-like affair here between these 2 talented grapplers. And Serena Deeb did the longest, like, drag it out, like, I'll look around at the crowd here. Should I shake this woman's hand? Should I do it, everyone? And she just leans back and she decks Riho right in the face. And just like that, with no other build-up or tease or anything, just like that, Deeb is the heel. Deeb is the bad guy. Deeb is the antagonist in this match. And it continued all the way throughout the match. She would have Riho wrapped up in the ropes, and she's clawing at the eyes. She's doing all this dirty stuff. And then they end up having a great match. Riho's knee is injured. So Deeb focuses on the knee. She gives her a dragon screw leg whip, focuses on the knee a lot during the match. Riho is selling that knee during, she does a double foot stomp, things like that. They do sort of, the end of the match comes where there is a series of pinning combinations, which was very similar to the end of the match that they had in February. In February, they had one of those matches, or one of those spots at the end where there's multiple near falls all in a row from pinning combinations. They just keep reversing the other one's pinning combination into their own pinning combination. You see it all the time, and 99.9% of the time, that's not how the match ends. But this was how the match ended in February, with Riho getting a pin on one of those combinations. So they sort of go do that for a bit. But Serena Deeb, she's a little too smart this time. She reverses a pinning combination. She puts Riho into the Serenity Lock after viciously just slamming Riho's knee into the mat for a period of time. She locks in the Serenity Lock, gets the tap out. Serena Deeb defends the NWA Women's Championship successfully on the pre-show before she moves on to next weekend, and she'll defend it on pay-per-view for the NWA, and she's now a bad guy. And the second match of the night, the first match of the actual pay-per-view, was also a rematch from a match we had gotten earlier on Dynamite when Hangman Page took on Brian Cage. Now, on an earlier video, we had previewed that first Brian Cage versus Hangman Page match and sort of said, look, Hangman Page right now, he's ranked number 1. He's been ranked number 1 for a while now. He gets past Brian Cage here, and I think he's in the running to challenge Kenny Omega at Double or Nothing. However, that match on Dynamite, Brian Cage comes out, attacks Page before the match, some dirty underhanded stuff from Brian Cage. That plays into the entirety of the match. Brian Cage picks up a victory over Hangman Page. Page suffers his first loss of 2021, and that essentially takes Page out of the title picture. That loss that Hangman Page suffered allowed Pac and Orange Cassidy, who were the number 2 and 3 seeds at the time, to move into the top 2 seeds. They then met in singles action to determine who would face Kenny Omega. A whole bunch of stuff happened in that match, and they ended up both facing Kenny Omega. So anyway, we've got this match here where Hangman Page he's got this vendetta against Cage. Cage beat him, took him out of the title picture, attacked him before the match. But Page has been teasing to Cage leading up to this match, like, hey, why don't you go in here without Team Taz? Come on, you're Brian Cage. Look at you. You're the Machine. What do you need Team Taz watching your back for, running interference for you, that kind of thing. And we'd had Brian Cage. It had been teased that Brian Cage wasn't all too happy with being in Team Taz. Like, if you go back a few months ago, they had teased where Brian Cage had apologized to Sting or something like that. Like, when Team Taz was feuding with Sting, Cage did something that Team Taz didn't really like. And then later, Taz is cutting a promo saying that Brian Cage apologized to everyone and it's cool now. And Brian Cage just gave him a look like, that didn't happen. But then kind of shrug it off like, well, I don't care. And then it just kind of moved on. And I remember thinking, like, did they really just sort of plant the seed of Brian Cage leaving Team Taz and then just dropped it? Maybe. And I don't even know if that would have been that bad of a thing if they had done it. Like, say they had teased that Brian Cage was going to leave Team Taz, but then never did it. Would that be that terrible? There would definitely be people on social media, because people on social media hate things. There would definitely be people who'd be like, oh, AEW is like WCW now. This is just like the Hummer angle. They never went back to it. But I think sometimes not following up on little hints like that, throwing out little red herrings to let the audience think they know what's going to happen, and then not do that, I don't know. It just seems like it would add more to the unpredictability. But anyway, long story short, they'd sort of dropped that idea that Cage wasn't getting along with his Team Taz stablemates up until sort of Cage says, leave Team Taz in the back. You don't need Team Taz. Whatever. And then Taz is on commentary for this match, and he just kind of subtly mentions, like, yeah, Cage didn't want Hook or Hobbs out there. I wasn't really that happy with that, but whatever. We're Team Taz. We're great. We like orange. And all right, okay. But then the end of the match comes where Team Taz wants to run interference, and Cage is having none of it. So Hook is distracting the ref. Hobbs is wanting to hand Cage a belt. Or it might have been, Starks might have done something. I don't know. But anyway, Team Taz comes out and they're ready to run interference. But Cage is like, nah, that's not me. I've got a baby face brewing inside me. Inside my big muscles, there's a big baby face waiting to come out. And so Cage sort of rebuffs this interference attempt, and he's dealing with Hook on the ring apron, doesn't notice that Hangman Page has gone out to the ring apron, jumps in, does his buckshot lariat, hits Brian Cage, gets the win, and with that, Hangman Page has avenged his loss to Brian Cage from earlier this month, or not too long ago anyway, and now we need to see what the fallout is between Brian Cage and Team Taz. Now, this is way bigger than any of the hints or the teases that they had dropped before. This is something that'll need to be addressed on Dynamite. And you wonder, is Brian Cage the FTW champion? If he leaves Team Taz and is still the FTW champion, where does that take us? What does that mean for Brian Cage and his former, sort of still current stablemates from Team Taz? Very interesting stuff. Page, he's going to move back into the upper echelons of the rankings, I would imagine. Maybe he'll be in the running for a title shot come the next pay-per-view. Certainly now that he's avenged his loss to Brian Cage, he moves closer to that spot for sure. But that was Brian Cage versus Hangman Page kicking off the pay-per-view. If you were like me, you were a little surprised to see the Young Bucks versus Jon Moxley and Eddie Kingston be the second match on the show. And this was the match on the show which really made me take notice of what the fan responses meant during this show. Because yeah, we've had fans back, but clearly there's a difference between a socially distanced crowd and one where you've got thousands of people all jammed together. The energy's different, the crowd chants are different, and I really felt like this show was almost like the unveiling of the crowd's responses to certain wrestlers, right? Like we've had a year and a half of basically no crowd responses, like a few scattered fans in Daly's place, wrestlers from Dark and Elevation cheering on the outside, but that's different to what we got last night. What we got last night was like the unveiling of your grade, of the wrestler's grade from the fans. How much have we liked what you've been doing over the time that we've been away? We're going to verbalize that tonight. And boy, did everyone want to let Eddie Kingston know that they've been enjoying what he's been doing over the last year. Think about this. Think of how popular the Young Bucks are. Pretty popular. Think of how popular Jon Moxley is. The guy who held the world title through most of the pandemic, who won the world title at Revolution in 2020 just before the pandemic. Very popular guy. The person the crowd chanted for the most in this match was Eddie Kingston. Eddie Kingston, who has never performed in front of a capacity crowd for AEW before last night. He came in during the pandemic. He came in after Cody Rhodes had won the TNT title and was inviting indie talent from all over the world to come in and have a match with him. And Eddie Kingston took every single advantage of that opportunity. He came in, he cut a promo. He had this crazy match with Cody Rhodes, and absolutely everyone who saw it said, yeah, they need to hire Eddie Kingston right now. And they did. And now Eddie Kingston is having huge pay-per-view matches against the Young Bucks and finally getting to do it in front of a crowd that really let him know how much they appreciate what he's brought to the table over the last year. And that was really cool to see. That was, and it happened a few times throughout the show where we would see these wrestlers who have never been able to get a crowd reaction, a capacity crowd reaction before. Like even just the Varsity Blondes coming out in the Casino Battle Royale. I don't think they'd been in front of an AEW live crowd before. Certainly not since we got to learn a lot more about Brian Pillman Jr. through the Dark Side of the Ring, and things like that. So Brian Pillman getting this big ovation along with Griff Garrison, the Varsity Blondes. So this happened a lot, but for nobody was it bigger than for Eddie Kingston. It's like everybody all agreed before the show. It's like, so we're all going to make sure Eddie Kingston knows we like him, right? Yes, we'll make sure. Okay, because we all need to be in. Yes, okay. So like some agreement, I would say unspoken agreement, not what I acted out, but the crowd definitely decided that they were going to make sure that Eddie Kingston knows how over he is, or that the AEW management knows how over Eddie Kingston is. It was really cool. It was really awesome. And this was an absolutely epic match. It was just action, non-stop action throughout the entire thing. And a lot of it, there was a lot of Young Bucks style psychology in it, and Young Bucks style psychology from their older Bullet Club days. Because every time the Young Bucks gained an advantage in this match, it was because of they had cheated somehow. It could have been as simple as a thumb to the eye. It could have been as simple as taking advantage of Kingston and Moxley having their back turned to them while they were focusing on Brandon Cutler. And I also noticed early in the match, they had to establish that Jon Moxley and Eddie Kingston have a finishing move. But because they haven't wrestled all that much, they had to do it in this match to get it over. So they used sort of like it's a clothesline suplex type move. I can't remember what they called it. But they did it on Brandon Cutler like early in the match just to show, hey, don't forget that we have this move. It'll come in later in the match. So again, just a lot of crazy exciting stuff going on in this match. But in the end, I had sort of thought that Eddie Kingston was going to take the pin because Jon Moxley is, former AEW world champion. I didn't think the Young Bucks were going to lose this match just because I didn't think they were going to lose the titles. But surprisingly, it was John Moxley, who was pinned by the Young Bucks. They delivered those double knees, but they actually delivered 4 in a row. So it was one of these situations like, yeah, we pinned John Moxley, but our finisher that nobody's kicked out of, he sort of stayed with it a little bit after we gave it to him. So we had to give it to him 3 more times. So yeah, we pinned him, but it took 4 of our finishers to do it. So keeping John Moxley strong while pinning him. And I think maybe the idea was Eddie Kingston's getting too popular. We don't want to pin him in this match and do anything to derail his popularity. Whereas John Moxley's John Moxley. Anything could happen to him at this point, and he's still believable as a top. I mean, John Moxley is one of the best wrestlers in the world, right? And so this taking a pin to the Young Bucks after taking 4 of their finishers, that's not going to hurt him too much. But I wanted to just take a look a little bit at the Tag Team Championship statistics now in AEW. So the Young Bucks are 3 weeks away from breaking the record for the longest tag team title reign in terms of collective days. So they are sitting at, let me just pull this up, and this should be up on your screen as well. As of this recording, they are at 205 days as champions, and Adam Page and Kenny Omega's reign was 228 days. So a little over 3 weeks, and the Young Bucks are going to break that record. The only other 2 teams to hold the titles, Frankie Kazarian and Scorpio Sky, held them for 83 days, and FTR held them for 63 days. However, I don't know if days as champion is going to be that important of a statistic in AEW. Title defenses seem a little bit like they're the bigger deal in AEW. Because a lot of the time where you don't see a lot of title defense statistics for WWE, because up until the pandemic, there'd been all these title matches on house shows that just get ignored, right? And it's also very difficult to keep stats on that when you've got like 3 title matches over a weekend. But in AEW, it's a little bit different. They don't ever just pretend that a house show match didn't happen or something like that. So in terms of title defenses, Kenny Omega and Hangman Page defended the titles 9 times successfully and then lost the titles on the 10th attempt. The match at Double or Nothing was the Young Bucks' 7th successful title defense, so they need 2 more to tie Hangman Page and Kenny Omega's record for title defenses. As for FTR they defended the titles actually 3 times, which is pretty good considering they only held the titles for 2 months. So they had 3 successful title defenses, followed by their 1 unsuccessful title defense. Frankie Kazarian and Scorpio Sky, the inaugural champions, they held the titles for 83 days, and they defended them 4 times in that stretch. So the Young Bucks are coming up on breaking 2 records for the tag team titles, the most title defenses and the most combined days as champion. However, I mean, they need to defend the titles 2 more times to tie Page and Omega. Going to get into who those teams might possibly be. But you kind of wonder, it's like, all right, John Moxley and Eddie Kingston, they got launched out to the top of the division pretty quickly because obviously they're big stars. And you wonder, like, well, could we see another tag team with a big star in it kind of get rocket strapped up the division as well? You almost wonder about Sting and Darby Allin. Where do they come in? You know, they're now 2-0 as a tag team, right? So where do they come in as being a possible contender to the Young Bucks tag titles down the road? That's an interesting concept. I don't know. That's just speculation. They might not be going there at all. But the Young Bucks pick up their 7th title defense here. They continue their Shawn Michaels from the 1990s heel turn. And we'll see where Moxley and Kingston go from here as well. All right, next up was the Casino Battle Royale, with the winner receiving a AEW World Championship down the line. Not going to go into this too much other than the Christian versus Powerhouse Hobbs, that rivalry, which we've seen on Dynamite a little bit. They've been brawling in the back, kind of stuff like that, as Christian's been feuding with Team Taz. That played a prevalent role throughout the match, as did Matt Hardy's Hardy family office trying to secure a title shot for Big Money Matt. That also played a role in the story. Then we'll get to the Joker. The Joker. So obviously the Joker, they do this every year now, is the surprise entrant into the Battle Royal. And it was Lio Rush. Lio Rush. Now, according to reports after this, Dave Meltzer said, look, Lio Rush is not signing with AEW. Lio Rush has a contract with New Japan Pro Wrestling. Lio Rush would be in Japan if it wasn't for, all the stuff that's going on in Japan and the world in terms of traveling. But he is a big part of New Japan Strong. They held a tournament on New Japan Strong to declare the first ever New Japan Strong Openweight champion. Lio Rush made it to the semifinals of that tournament. He lost to Brody King. Brody King then lost to Tom Lawler, who's the first ever champion. Lio Rush has also been doing stuff in MLW as well. So, Lio Rush is a member of the New Japan roster. He comes in. He does a lot of, fun stuff kind of flying around the ring. And Lio Rush, before he signed with WWE in 2017, he'd been big on the California, sort of the southern West Coast indie scene, where the Young Bucks and SCU and all those other guys, PW and the guys from PWG and the Lucha Bros and stuff. So very familiar with a lot of the guys that are in AEW as well. But he would not be the winner of this match. It came down to Jungle Boy, Christian Cage, Matt Hardy, and the Hardy family office. And so the baby faces get rid of the Hardy family office. They're gone. And comes down to Christian Cage versus Jungle Boy. Heading into the match, I think a lot of people had Christian Cage as the favorite, because then, wow, that builds up like a big match between Christian Cage and Kenny Omega. Wouldn't that be something? That's a big match that would do killer ratings on Dynamite. But boy, did this crowd love some Jungle Boy. And the other thing about there being a crowd back for the first time since Tarzan Boy was acquired as Jungle Boy's theme music, this crowd got to chant along with the oi 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 stuff. It's sort of a hard thing to chant along in unison, right? Because you're not really sure how many oi ois are there in there. Are some ois stretched out longer than other ois? And so a lot of times it's just, you can tell everyone's trying to sing along together, but it's pretty difficult. I think they did a good job under the circumstances. It was the first attempt at singing the oi oi Tarzan Boy stuff in unison, and I think they did okay. That's a tough one to do. But it was a big, it was like a goosebump inducing just entrance. His entrance was goosebump inducing. Then we get down to the final bit, and it's Christian versus Jungle Boy, and they did a very risky end to this match. If they messed up the ending to this match, then it totally would have changed. Like, it could have easily been Christian moving on to face Kenny Omega, not because that's the match result they booked, but purely because it could have accidentally happened at the end of this match. So they're both on the ring apron. Christian goes to throw Jungle Boy off. He runs like around the steel post and sort of like does like a twirl around the post that if he had messed that up at all, he's going down to the floor and Christian's facing Kenny Omega. So it almost led me to believe that the reason it came down to Christian versus Christian versus Jungle Boy is because if Jungle Boy messed that move up, then oh well, Christian takes on Kenny Omega. What's the big deal? But after he does that cool move, then Jungle Boy flips Christian out of the ring. Jungle Boy, after seemingly being amongst the last few in every single battle royal that AEW's ever had, he finally wins one and he's getting a title shot. So pretty exciting stuff. And the crowd reaction to Jungle Boy really led me to believe that it's time. You can do it with Jungle Boy now. You can You can move Jungle Boy. He should stay in Jurassic Express, right? That's his team. But you could move Jungle Boy to singles now and have Marco Stunt and Luchasaurus be the Jungle Express team. So you've got a tag team and you've got a singles guy because Jungle Boy is ready to go. Just like you've been doing with Darby Allin, Jungle Boy is ready to be put in main events. He's ready to main event Dynamite. He's ready to have big matches on pay-per-view. Jungle Boy is ready to be one of those guys that brings in money for AEW. Well, he's already that, but he's one of those guys now who's going to be like one of the top young baby faces that they groom, like a Darby Allin, right? I think there's a lot of similarities between Darby Allin and Jungle Boy in terms of how the company's handling them. This is a young, not homegrown, but to a national audience or an international audience, homegrown. How do we present these guys now to this audience? Start building up the idea that these are major players. I think this was a huge victory for Jungle Boy. How it played out was huge for Jungle Boy. The fan response was the biggest thing of all of it. And good on those fans for sticking it out and sticking with those oi oi ois and trying to create the best atmosphere they could. So now in 2 weeks, Jungle Boy will go on to face Kenny Omega for the AEW World Championship in a match that I'm sure will do very well on TNT. Next up, we had the American Dream Cody Rhodes against Anthony Ogogo. Now, this storyline's a little interesting. So all right, where do I start with this? So this storyline has started based on the Nightmare family versus the QT Marshall's gym splitting. Anthony Ogogo is QT Marshall's student. Cody Rhodes has his Nightmare family students, and there's a big feud. And so this was, I like the QT Marshall Cody Rhodes plot line because it also provided a lot of wrestlers who you generally see on AEW Dark or Dark Elevation. It gave them a storyline, right? All of a sudden, Aaron Solo has stuff, not Aaron Solo for a decade has been, here's a good wrestler. He's Aaron Solo. He'll have a wrestling match. I can't ever remember Aaron Solo having a storyline, but now he's got a storyline. He's part of QT Marshall's gym, the factory, and he's feuding with Cody Rhodes' Nightmare Factory family. So all right, but then they just switched it up during the build up to this, and it became about Anthony Ogogo making statements against the anti-American statements. He's joined the Un-Americans. Anthony Ogogo has joined the Un-Americans, and Cody Rhodes wants to be very patriotic, wants to use the American Dream nickname. He came out in a lot of red, white, and blue stuff, and it's gotten sort of a lukewarm reaction. Certainly anything Cody does is filled with passion. Cody is possibly the most passionate guy in pro wrestling. He really gives all of himself to his promos and is very prone to the big, dramatic, emotional speech promo, which is great because he's really good at it. I'm not sure a lot of people got into the USA versus UK thing. I don't know. I don't know what spot there is in wrestling for those kind of patriotic angles in 2021. I honestly don't know. I mean, it's a global audience, right? So, but it felt like this was something Cody wanted to do. Like Cody, again, because he's a very passionate guy, he probably is really patriotic. And they did do some stuff for, I really enjoyed, they did some, a PSA for a charity that helps provide service dogs for veterans. They honored the veterans. It's Memorial Day. So I guess that was playing in their decision to make it a very patriotic angle, which is fine. I just felt like the real angle is between the two gyms, QT Marshall's gym and Cody's gym. And that storyline really took a back seat in this match. But anyway, Cody picked up the victory here, though they did do a good job of making sure that Anthony Ogogo is seen as someone who can do a lot of damage in there. So they've done a great job of building up the idea that if Anthony Ogogo punches you in the stomach, that really hurts. That really hurts a lot. And I love that they did the punch in the stomach and the Olympic slam because, of course, Anthony Ogogo is a former Olympian. But in the end, it was Cody picking up the victory with a vertebreaker. And it might not have been the best reviewed match of the card. Anthony Ogogo is just getting started on his pro wrestling journey. So I don't think it was ever going to be, the top match on the show or even above average for the other matches on the show. But it furthered a storyline now. So I don't know if this storyline is over now or not. Does QT Marshall and his gym just move on to something else? Does Cody Rhodes move on to something else? Does Cody Rhodes challenge for the TNT title again soon? He elected not to challenge or to rematch Darby Allin for the title. And so could we possibly get Miro defending the TNT title against Cody Rhodes? To me, it feels like you're not really the TNT champion until you beat Cody, right? That's Cody's title. And everybody who's ever held the title, except for Miro, had to beat Cody for it. So I feel like we need to see Miro versus Cody Rhodes. And maybe that's where we're going. All right, so next up we had the TNT Championship match, Miro defending against Lance Archer. They did do an angle before this match. They showed it before the match. It took place like earlier in the day. They were doing a weigh-in or some type of media event in the ring. And during this, Miro turns around and gives Jake Roberts a shot to the midsection. So then they tell us, okay, no, Jake Roberts won't be accompanying Lance Archer to ringside anymore. And everyone who's a big Jake Roberts fan like myself went, oh, come on, so this match is just a big hoss fight. They're going, Lance Archer put Miro through a table early. They're doing all sorts of stuff that only big guys can do. But then Jake Roberts does come out. So Jake Roberts finally does come out. He's got a bag that we're all led to believe has a snake in it, because we've seen this so many times. So he comes in, but he's having trouble getting the bag open. Miro grabs a hold of him, grabs the bag. Miro ends up with the bag, starts shaking the bag around to the point where it's like, if there was actually a snake in there, that's not really that cool, dude. But then he just turns around and he chucks the bag all the way up onto the stage. Crowd boos him to all heck for this. Obviously, there couldn't have been a snake in there. There's no reason for them to put a snake in there since the snake never came out. But it did really turn Miro into the bad guy pretty solidly in this match. And I almost wonder if they felt like they had to do a little bit more to make sure that Miro got booed in the match. And that's where that pre-match angle with Jake Roberts and throwing the snake came in. Because Miro, in the last little while, since he moved away from Kip Sabian, Miro is the Miro that everybody wanted him to be. He's finally that guy, So maybe they were thinking, hey, we need to do something a little extra here to make sure that Miro gets booed because we want to keep him a heel. And maybe that's where all this stuff with the snake came in, all the stuff with Jake Roberts came in. But in the end, it was Miro picking up the victory via referee's decision over Lance Archer. And so that is Miro, I believe that is Miro's first title defense. And to me, we'll just see what happens. To me, Miro's got to defend this title against Cody Rhodes. Everybody else has defended this title against Cody Rhodes. This title is very associated with Cody Rhodes. So if you think Cody was the first champion, right? And so it was actually Double or Nothing last year that Cody won the title for the first time. It was the finals of the TNT title tournament. He actually defeated Lance Archer in the finals of that tournament. Cody goes on. He has a great title reign where he's defending against guys like Warhorse and Ricky Starks and Eddie Kingston. He defends that title 8 times over basically a 3-month, just under a 3-month period. He then loses it to Brody Lee. Brody Lee holds the title for just a couple of months, just under 2 months. He defended it successfully against Dustin Rhodes and Orange Cassidy before dropping it back to Cody for his second title reign, Cody would end up dropping that title to Darby Allin at Full Gear. Darby Allin then had a very successful run with the title. Darby Allin had 8 successful title defenses. That ties the record of what Cody did in his first title reign. So Cody and Darby Allin both had title reigns of 8 title defenses. So that's what the record is. 8 title defenses, TNT championship. Cody, of course, won the title a second time. However, he didn't hold on to it very longer. So Cody, still the more successful TNT champion over Miro. Over Darby Allin. And Miro's got a long way to go before he catches either Cody Rhodes or Darby Allin. He's got to defend that title another 6 times. He defended it for the first time against Dante Martin on Dynamite. Now he's defended it against Lance Archer. So he needs another 6 title defenses to tie Cody and Darby Allin. To many people, the most important match on the show was Dr. Britt Baker, DMD, challenging for the AEW Women's Championship against Hikaru Shida. A lot of fans made their way to Daly's Place in Jacksonville because they wanted to see Britt Baker win the AEW Women's Championship. This despite the fact that Miss Baker is a dirty, dastardly, underhanded heel who cheats, who is not a very good friend to Rebel. But she's so good at playing this character. She's so good at the role. She was so good in that lights out match against Thunder Rosa where her face was a crimson mask. And if you noticed what she was wearing in this match against Hikaru Shida, it was like there was little blood drops. Like the design, the pattern was all blood related. So I guess it's associated to that. And I thought to myself, boy, Britt Baker is a lot like Roddy Piper. And what I mean by that is Roddy Piper during the rock and wrestling era was the most hated man in pro wrestling. Everybody hated him. Goes on and he main events WrestleMania. Then he goes throughout the next year and he has this big boxing match with Mr. T at WrestleMania 2. Except for in that match, the fans started to cheer him. The fans turned on Piper. And it was almost like there was an acknowledgement of, we get that guy's just a performer. And he's so good at being that performer, we're going to cheer him. No matter how much of a jerk the character he's performing as is, right? And that's what this was. Britt Baker, the character, is a terrible person. But Britt Baker, the performer, is fantastic. And a lot of people really wanted to see Britt Baker finally get, like, she really earned this title. She has been the most entertaining part of the AEW women's division for so long now. And for her to, and I think a lot of fans really wanted to see her finally get her due. And it's interesting because Hikaru Shida has been a fantastic champion. Hikaru Shida, I don't think, has ever had a bad match. And she held that title for a year from Double or Nothing to Double or Nothing. And having that established of a champion be the one that Britt Baker took the title off is significant as well. Because the titles never felt more important. A championship is never going to feel more important than when somebody has held it and been defending it regularly for a year and then loses it. Because you've seen for a year people try to win this title and fail. But Britt Baker didn't fail. And now she's the champion. But of course, because AEW still wants fans to boo her. And fans might go back to booing Britt Baker. This might have just been a thing of like, we haven't seen you in a long time, Britt, and we want to let you know you're doing great. Now that she's won the title, now that fans have gotten that first night back to kind of tell her that she's great, maybe they'll go back to kind of booing her. In sort of the same way that fans would boo Jericho, where it's like a lot of Jericho's fans would boo him too, right? just because he's that good at being a heel. But you almost wonder, because of the crowd reaction to Baker, do you find a way to turn her babyface? Right? Like, is there a way for that to happen while keeping the essence of the character? Because if you can do that, if you can keep the essence of this Britt Baker character that everybody has grown to love so much, and you can keep those crowd reactions, and you can have her being a babyface and selling even more merchandise, doing even better on ticket sales, it could be the best thing that's happened to AEW's women's division so far. But it's risky because she's gotten to where she is right now by being such a great heel. And she actually did an interview not long ago saying, I never want to be a babyface again. So it also depends, like, you might not be able to turn her into a babyface because she's not comfortable doing it. We'll just have to wait and see. But I got a lot of Roddy Piper vibes from Britt Baker in terms of everybody loves her because she's so good at being hateable. And that's one of those things that you can only get in pro wrestling. The other thing with the AEW women's title here is where does Thunder Rosa fit into this? Because you go back to that AEW Dynamite main event lights out match between Thunder Rosa and Britt Baker. Thunder Rosa won that match. However, before you write in the comments section, I'm with you. I know that match doesn't matter. The match, it was a non-sanctioned match, didn't technically happen. But the fans know it happened. So it's one of those things where you can't give Thunder Rosa a title shot right away because she won that lights out match, because nobody won that lights out match. That match never happened. So it's not like Thunder Rosa can claim number one contendership or anything like that because she beat Britt Baker earlier. No. But fans know that Thunder Rosa did beat Britt Baker. And so that's going to make it very exciting when Thunder Rosa challenges Britt Baker for the women's championship. However, to get there, Thunder Rosa is going to have to qualify for a title match. And we'll see if she's able to do that. Thunder Rosa might be NWA Women's Champion after this weekend. We don't really know. She might end up getting a shot against Serena Deeb as well, the freshly heel Serena Deeb. So Thunder Rosa's waiting in the wings there. We know Thunder Rosa, she's got Britt Baker's number. We've seen her beat her before, but now can Thunder Rosa win enough sanctioned AEW matches to earn a title shot? Does Hikaru Shida get a rematch? A lot of questions coming out of Britt Baker, marching this division into a new era. But we'll just have to see where everything goes. Hikaru Shida, a fantastic title reign. But now, finally, after 2 years of her being the face of the division, we move into an era where Britt Baker is the champion. And that should prove to be pretty interesting. Sting wrestled his first match in front of live wrestling fans since Night of Champions 2015 at Double or Nothing. He teamed with Darby Allin. They defeated the team of Ethan Page and Scorpio Sky. I couldn't believe all the things that Sting did in this match. Like right off the bat, right early in the match, Sting has taken a suplex onto the ramp, the entranceway. Then Sting comes back from that, basically no-sells that, gets right back up, gets onto the poker chips, dives off the poker chips, and we've got this big match now. Sting and Darby Allin. Like, this was another thing where we haven't seen Sting since the crowds went away. Sting returned to wrestling at Winter is Coming, which was December, when winter was coming. And so we've never seen him in front of a live audience either. And I think there's so many times during this show where I was like, God, we've been in this pandemic for so long. Where it's the point where, like, I didn't even know what we were missing by not having crowds anymore, because it had been so long that you just kind of forgotten about it and accepted this this new era of wrestling with piped in crowd noise or limited crowd noise because everyone's far apart. Sting coming back and getting that reaction and seeing Sting in front of all those fans. That was his first time in front of like that type of an audience since what happened at Night of Champions 2015. If you remember, everybody just thought they had witnessed Sting get paralyzed that night. And we certainly thought that it was the end of his career. But now for Sting to come back, and I've had this run with Darby Allin, and to have helped turn Darby Allin into such a big time star, into such a guy who they can put in main events every week, basically, and know that it's going to do well, know that it's going to draw a lot of fans. And I think one of the things that has gone so well about this Sting and Darby Allin partnership is it's not about bringing Darby Allin into Sting's world. It's about bringing Sting into Darby Allin's world. And I want to compare this to when TNA tried to put Ric Flair and AJ Styles together. If you don't remember this, you don't need to go back and look it up. You just don't. So this was back in the Hogan, Bischoff, mumbo jumbo stage in TNA, or at least I think it was. Vince Russo's fingerprints are all over this. I have no idea who actually came up with this, but they put Ric Flair and AJ Styles together, but instead of sort of having Flair be in the backdrop for AJ, they had AJ be in the backdrop for Flair. So Flair or AJ dyes his hair blonde, starts wearing Ric Flair robes, and all the things that people liked about AJ Styles were gone, and they were replaced with stuff about Ric Flair. And I guess the idea was, all right, AJ Styles can have some of the greatest wrestling matches in the world, but nobody cares about him. So if we just make him a carbon copy of Ric Flair everywhere outside of the ring, then the stuff he does inside the ring will be better responded to. But no, that was ridiculous. Everyone went, what? He's not Ric Flair. He's AJ Styles. Huh? Didn't go over well. That's not what AEW has done with Darby Allin and Sting. Sting has moved into Darby Allin's world. So instead of like Darby Allin coming out with a baseball bat and having more crow face paint, Sting is showing up in Darby Allin's movies, right? Sting is doing all these things that play into the stuff that Darby Allin was already doing. And all it's doing is sort of, one, you're putting a larger spotlight on Darby Allin because Sting is a big time star. And so people will tune in to see him, see Darby Allin and go, hey, that guy, I'll follow his career. That sounds good. What has he got? Another 20, 25 years left in his career? Yeah, I'll watch that. But it's also like there are similarities between Darby Allin and Sting, but they're very unique from each other too. They're both sort of dark, brooding characters, but they're dark, brooding characters in other ways, or in different ways. Sorry, they both have like black and white face paint, but they both have black and white face paint in different ways. I guess that face paint is a good analogy for just the overall relationship between Darby Allin and Sting. They're similar, but different still too. And so they picked up the victory here as Sting gets the victory over Scorpio Sky, which was probably a big deal to Scorpio Sky and was probably pretty cool for Sting to get the victory in front of a live cheering crowd and now proving, hey, what the heck? You can wrestle into your 60s too. And we mentioned this back when we were talking about the tag team title match. Could Darby Allin and Sting move into tag team title contention? They just beat Ethan Page and Darby Allin, who I think were the number 3 seeds or the number 2 seeds, and coming into this match at 8-0. And the Young Bucks have beaten all the top seeded teams. They beat SCU, they beat the Varsity Blondes, they've beaten Moxley and Kingston. So I would say Darby Allin and Sting, you could do that. That could be a big pay-per-view match. That could be a big match to draw a lot of ratings on TV. But I think a lot of Sting fans were probably finished watching this match and felt it it helped erase the memory of what happened at Night of Champions 2015. Obviously, he had the cinematic match beforehand, but this match in front of live fans, I think, hopefully Sting isn't ending his career after this. Hopefully he does more, because clearly he still can. But if this was the last match for Sting, like the last official match, this is a good way to go out. And the AEW World Championship on the line in a triple threat action at Double or Nothing. Kenny Omega versus Pac versus Orange Cassidy. And this is one of those things where at Double or Nothing, for the second year in a row, the world title match has not been the main event. The main event has been Stadium Stampede. So you can sort of get away with not giving away a pay-per-view main event match in your world title match on this pay-per-view, right? Like, they didn't give away Kenny Omega versus Orange Cassidy. Well, not that it would be giving away because people are paying for the pay-per-view, but they can still do a Kenny Omega versus Orange Cassidy singles match on pay-per-view or on one of these special branded shows. And so you still have that first Kenny Omega versus Orange Cassidy match if you want it, right? I think they might want it based on how this match ended. This match did end with a little bit of controversy, so it does lead me to believe that we could get a Kenny Omega versus Orange Cassidy match in the future, although Kenny Omega has a few big matches coming up regardless. So Pac's in this match, Orange Cassidy's in this match. The storyline leading up to it a little bit is Kenny Omega's trying to give Orange Cassidy an out to say, hey, you don't need to be in this match because you're coming in a little bit injured after what happened in that match against Pac. So it still feels like there's unfinished business between Kenny Omega and Orange Cassidy. But let's just go to what happened at the end of this match here. So there was a lot of interference in this match. Multiple people from the Elite. Don Callis got involved. He's pulling the referee out to prevent 3 counts. Carl Anderson and Doc Gallows are coming out. So there's a lot of interference going on. And then finally the end of the match comes where Pac has Orange Cassidy in that submission hold. I'm forgetting the name of it. But he's got him locked into that. Kenny Omega's trying to break up the submission hold, but he's hitting Pac, but Pac's not breaking the hold. Kenny Omega looks around like, what the heck am I going to do? If Orange Cassidy submits here, I lose my title. So he just turns around and he decks the referee. So the referee is out. And I don't know, maybe somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know that we've seen like a ref bump like this in AEW before. Have we? We certainly don't see it a lot. The refs in AEW seem to remain conscious more often than referees in other promotions. But it did seem like, okay, like this is like one of the first times that we've seen this. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But we definitely only see it rarely. Then Don Callis starts introducing all of the title belts into this match. The 4 title belts that Kenny Omega is holding on to. The AAA Mega Championship, the Impact World Championship, the TNA World Championship, and the AEW World Championship. So he starts laying Pac out with the belts. Orange Cassidy's been taken out by Pac. And so finally it looks like Kenny Omega's got this one, but Orange Cassidy, he fights back. He hits Kenny Omega with the orange punch. Aubrey Edwards comes out. She flies into the ring. She's going to do a pin. Orange Cassidy's going to be the world champion. She counts to 2, but Kenny Omega counters it into a crucifix. He puts Orange Cassidy's shoulders to the mat. Aubrey Edwards counts the 3. Kenny Omega retains the AEW World Championship, but he retained it in such a way where he clearly cheated Orange Cassidy out of it, right? There was numerous points in the match where it looked like Orange Cassidy was going to win the World Championship. What a crazy, wow, what a historic event that would be if Orange Cassidy becomes your world champion. But no, just right when you thought it was going to happen, just like that, Kenny Omega counters it and gets the 3 count himself and retains the title. But I think we're left with a lot of reason to look forward to a future Kenny Omega versus Orange Cassidy singles match. But we'll have to see how everything plays out, because Kenny Omega's his dance card is kind of booked for the next little while. So he's got next week off. But then after that, he's got to defend 2 of his championships. Because they announced that in 2 weeks, so not this coming Friday, but the Friday after that, Kenny Omega will defend the AEW World Championship against the winner of the Casino Battle Royale, Jungle Boy. That weekend, I'm pretty sure it's that weekend, like June 12th, Kenny Omega's got to defend the Impact World Championship against Moose at Under Siege. So a lot going on with Kenny Omega and all of these title belts he's collected. Also, jumping a little bit forward, but he's also got to defend that AAA Mega Championship. I believe that's in August at Triple Mania this year. He's defending that against Andrade. So it looks like Kenny Omega's schedule for the next few months is pretty booked. He's going to have this match with Jungle Boy. Then he's moving on to Moose. Then he's moving on to Andrade. But you got to wonder, where does Orange Cassidy fit in all this mix? The other person that I think factors into this is Hangman Page, because Hangman Page was the #1 ranked wrestler for a very long time until he lost to Brian Cage. Now he's avenged that loss to Brian Cage. So if Page can get a few more wins over some ranked opponents under his belt, then all of a sudden Page is back in the title picture as well. So Kenny Omega, he survived with his title belt in this match here, but there is no shortage of challengers awaiting for him. He might think, oh, I got rid of Moxley. I defeated Moxley twice in a row. I don't have anything to worry about. Orange Cassidy, Jungle Boy, Moose, Hangman Page. There is no shortage of upcoming challengers for the AEW World Champion Kenny Omega. The big main event from Double or Nothing 2021 was the Stadium Stampede match. Of course, it was Double or Nothing at 2020 when the Stadium Stampede match was introduced. Boy, were we in a different place on May 23rd, 2020. This was about the time where everyone realized that the pandemic was not going away anytime soon. And it was also when wrestling companies figured out, hey, cinematic matches are something that we can do to kind of make up for the lack of live crowd. But of course, now in time for Stadium Stampede 2, there is a live crowd. But don't worry, because the Inner Circle and the Pinnacle, they brawled throughout the stadium, but they made their way into Daly's place so that they could finish this match in front of live crowds, because guess what? We have live crowds again. And I thought that was just such a fitting way to end the show. Like, it's almost like the start of Stadium Stampede reminded you of where we were at, right? Like when I saw Stadium Stampede 2, I remembered where we were at during Stadium Stampede 1 and knowing that it would be a very long time before wrestling was presented in front of live crowds again. So you're reminded of that, but then as they brawl all the way through the stadium and then back into the live crowds, it was very symbolic. It was like, this is where we were, and now we're right back to where we want to be. And what this means for the future of the Stadium Stampede match, I can't really be sure. Tony Khan has said it will definitely return. We'll definitely be having these empty stadium matches, but do you do them on a pay-per-view when you have a live audience? When you have like 20,000 people in a big arena as opposed to 5,000 people in Daly's place? Do you still do these matches that are very much still cinematic matches? I'm not sure. I mean, we'll see what happens with Stadium Stampede 3, but Stadium Stampede 2 solved this problem by having them brawl their way into Daly's place. But then what do you do? Like, Nick's Double or Nothing is not going to be held at Daly's place or possibly near Jacksonville's football stadium. So what do you do then? So who knows what happens for the future of Stadium Stampede? But one thing we do know is that the Inner Circle do have a future. They won this match, and so therefore they do not have to disband. And this match, I noticed, had significantly less comedy to it than the first Stadium Stampede match. There was a lot of brawling. There was a lot of just straight up fighting. And the story of the match played far more into bringing us back into the live crowds. than what happened last year, which was basically like a little movie. Like the first Stadium Stampede was a little movie. You had Hangman Page riding horses. You had the Young Bucks delivering suplexes, like repeating suplexes to somebody all the way down the football field. It was much more comedy-based, much more movie-based. This was a fight that went from a football stadium into the live crowd. And then at the end of it, we get Chris Jericho powerbombs Maxwell Jacob Friedman through this setup in the crowd. And then in the ring, the final sort of moments are just between Sammy Guevara and Shawn Spears. And this is what really brought the Inner Circle storyline over the last year full circle. It needed to be Sammy Guevara in this spot because so much of this story has revolved around Sammy Guevara. It was Sammy Guevara who quit the Inner Circle because he didn't trust Maxwell Jacob Friedman. It was Sammy Guevara who actually took the pinfall in the Stadium Stampede match last year at Double or Nothing. Then it's Sammy Guevara who quit on behalf of the Inner Circle at the Blood and Guts match because he didn't want Jericho to get thrown off the cage, which ended up happening anyway. So for Sammy Guevara to then be in a position where if he gets pinned, it's over. He's ruined this faction. He's ended this faction. Sammy Guevara is the end of the Inner Circle. Instead of that, he pins Shawn Spears and he is the savior of the Inner Circle. And after all that took place with MJF joining and then getting kicked out of the group, with what happened at Stadium Stampede last year and Blood and Guts this year, after all of that, Sammy Guevara has come out the winner. He saved the Inner Circle. He's the hero of the Inner Circle. He gets hoisted on LAX's or Santana and Ortiz's shoulders to end the show. Fantastic. Fantastic story played out. And of course, no one thought the Inner Circle was going to lose and break up, but the story that they told that kept the faction together, I thought was tremendous. And the story that they told about everybody's journey from empty arena into full capacity crowds, I thought that was fantastic as well. And it sort of makes you wonder, man, we got a lot of cool stables in AEW, you know? We've got, do the Inner Circle and the Pinnacle keep this rivalry going? Do we get a trilogy match, right? Because they've each won one big match. The Pinnacle won Blood and Guts. The Inner Circle won Stadium Stampede. Now, MJF did beat Chris Jericho when they had a singles match not long ago, like before MJF started the Pinnacle. So I don't know if they're counting that as like the third. Maybe. I don't know. Do these two factions keep feuding, or do they move on to feuds with other factions? Like, there's an endless supply of faction versus faction feuds you could have in AEW. We could have the Pinnacle versus like the Dark Order. We could have the Elite versus the Inner Circle. Oh, that's what we should have. We should have the Elite versus the Inner Circle, but the roles reversed. Because that was like the first plot line that AEW did, was the Inner Circle versus the Elite. Except for the Inner Circle were the heels and the Elite were the baby faces. Now you could swap it up and do that again. You could also throw in guys like Team Taz. There's so many good factions. And Cody Rhodes teased the other day that they've always wanted to do these sort of trios titles or maybe team-based belts. Could we have some type of tournament pitting all of the top factions in AEW against each other? We'll just have to wait and see, but the Inner Circle comes away from Stadium Stampede 2 the victors. They remain a stable thanks to this, and Sammy Guevara is the big hero for the group. And that's going to do it for our AEW Double or Nothing 2021 review. Thanks so much again, guys, for supporting these videos. Don't forget to visit us at SpoilerFreeWrestling.com. Don't forget to subscribe and click the notifications bell so you don't miss out on any more videos. And don't forget to share this video as well with your friends, family, anyone who you think would enjoy it. Thanks again, everyone. I'm Ian from Spoiler Free Wrestling.